Good morning and welcome to the Public File. I'm Doug Thomas, and my guest for this segment is Donna Eckwortzel. She's the founder of Heart's Landing Ranch. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning.
April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Let me stop right there and say how awful it is that we have a month named after it. But that's why we're talking this morning.
It's a double-edged sword that we have a month that's dedicated to it because I think sometimes without bringing it to our awareness, it's easy to forget that there are people suffering. And we do it in silent desperation. You know, we're good about putting masks on. We're good about turning the crank, going to work. All the while inside, people are dying and suffering. And so, yeah, it's sad, yes, that we have the month that's dedicated to it, but at the same time, I'm super proud for people being willing to step up and say, no, this needs to be discussed. So thank you for having us on.
Heart's Landing is currently running a program for female military veterans who experienced sexual assault while serving. Heart's Landing is trailblazing the future in this kind of therapy. We'll touch base on that a little bit later, but first, Donna, tell us all about Heart's Landing Ranch.
So at Heart's Landing Ranch, we are dedicated to building a community to impact a community of individuals and families that are hurting because of a mental health crisis or trauma. And we do that with horses in equine assisted learning or equine assisted psychotherapy.
What made you decide to start the nonprofit?
Oh, it was inspired. We had really got a vision of impacting local foster youth, trafficking victims. This is a fairly large corridor in the Sacramento area for that business, so to speak, to exist, and local youth. And so it was really inspired. And people thought, oh, of course, Donna, you love horses. But it wasn't until we got really into doing the one-on-one mentoring, which is how we started with me, one-on-one mentoring. And then we had a therapist, a licensed therapist that was bringing her clients out. She actually had 60 clients a week that were coming out.
Wow.
And that's how we really were inspired and got started. And so we've actually added that part of what they call equine assisted psychotherapy. So there's equine assisted learning or therapy, which is, not necessarily with a therapist, with, lay people that have heart to serve and mentor youth. And then we also offer now the equine assisted psychotherapy part with a licensed therapist and an equine specialist and a horse, at least one, if not up to 10 horses in a session.
I think I know the answer to this one. It's a unique approach, but why horses, Donna?
They are non-judgmental and they're mirrors to our behavior. They can truly sense what's going on for us. So, for instance, if the judgmental part, when we're interacting with humans, I could say, let's say you and I are friends or, siblings or what have you, and, we say something and we end up, it doesn't end well, right? But I could say, oh, you're always like that. You never listen to me. You're always like that. And then continue the cycle, right? We don't react well when we're hurting to one another, right? Hurt people. You've probably heard that before. Whereas, in a horse situation, they're mirrors and they're non-judgmental, and they provide a lot of feedback as well as a backdrop to what's going on for them. So, for example, you might have an individual client that comes in and they really want to be close to one of the horses. Or any of the horses, right? And as they get close to them, the horses are walking away. And the question, they ask is, why are they walking away from me?
Yeah.
What's going on? And so there's an opportunity to have a conversation about what's going on for themselves, right? They can't blame the horse. The horse doesn't have a past history with them.
Right.
It sets up a lot of scenarios where it takes them out of people's comfort zones. Many times people will come and they're very afraid of horses or they've never been around them, but it creates an opening to have a different kind of conversation. A person's normal coping skills don't work in this environment. And let me tell you an example. We had a young man that was here, part of a group home that was coming. He was for judicial reasons, right? So he was under supervision of a probation officer. And he was so out of his comfort zone. The second time he was here, we were working with the boys as a team to move the horses around and work on clear communication, teamwork, how they engaged, right? How did they show up in an environment when they didn't know what to do or they were confused? Did they ask for help? And this young man was in the middle of the arena, and he said to us later he was looking for a place to jump the fence because he was so afraid.
Wow.
And at the very moment that he was ready to move, a horse came up behind him and gently pressed his head into the middle of his back. So if you can imagine the full long part of the horse's head pressing into your middle of your back.
Yeah.
And he said, Donna, that was the first time I ever believed I could belong to something other than a gang.
That's incredible. That is so powerful, Donna. Well, tell me a little bit more about equine assisted psychotherapy. Why did you choose that over traditional therapy?
For the example that I just shared, it's outside of someone's comfort zone. I don't know about you, but I'm in my late 50s, mid-late 50s. And, I struggle sometimes for the words. If I'm sitting across from someone and I'm having a challenging conversation, or I'm struggling with something that I'm ashamed of or feel guilty about, or have regret or lack of forgiveness, those kinds of complex things, it's hard to come up with the words.
Right.
And it's even more uncomfortable sometimes sitting across from someone. Traditional talk therapy doesn't always work for some people, and maybe even for a time, right? So we have therapists that sometimes have a client that gets stuck, and this helps get unstuck. One of our licensed social workers said we could do more in equine assisted psychotherapy in a short period of time than we can ever do sitting, talking one-on-one. That's why we do that. I'm driven. It was, as I said, inspired, and it works. It's unbelievable. Hopefully we'll talk more about the veterans, but
right.
We have one of the veteran therapists coming to observe our sessions. On the third session, he said, I cannot believe how fast and deep you can go in a session.
Yep. Animals make all the bad things go away, right?
And sometimes they bring it out, but they add a little bit of comfort, the fur and connecting, with a live being that you can put your hands on and talk to, that are going to keep your secrets.
Right.
Or sometimes I'll hear from some of our clients that the horse knows everything about them.
Well, Donna, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so let's talk about the new programs the ranch is offering, including services for women military veterans who've experienced sexual assault.
Thank you. Yes, it's super exciting to be able to offer hope and relief in this way. We received a couple of grants. This is something, a heart that's been on my heart with military and veterans. I didn't realize when we reached out to the veteran services here in Citrus Heights, they have 7 therapists that work in the office. And I said, we have some scholarships. What is your biggest need? And this is what they came up with was the military sexual assault, otherwise known as MST. So we started that and launched that as our first veteran program, and just witnessing such a huge impact on the participants that are coming, as well as the veteran licensed therapist that's coming. To give you an example, I always like sharing stories because it's a little hard. People think that, we're doing riding or we're just kind of brushing or doing chores. Not that, sure, we won't do brushing and some chores, to get the body moving. We certainly are ground-based, so everything's on the ground. But they feel very isolated, these women. They were in the military when some of these assaults occurred. And what do you do when you're on an aircraft carrier or in a organization where you don't feel like you have a voice going out? We're training them up, praise God, that they're willing to go into battle or into a scene or an environment that's not, that they're following orders and that their health is in the way. But, this is not part of what they signed up for. And it's a bigger issue than I ever would have even possibly ever imagined.
Sure.
And so we're seeing just huge breakthroughs. We have a whole curriculum. So what we put together with our therapists, and the veteran services, the VA services therapist, was an 8-week program, and working through trust and guilt and shame and certain concepts and themes. And we build horse activities around that. And in a recent activity that we had the women were sent out to pick a horse that they wanted to do a trust walk with. And we said you could choose any horse, you could change the horse, you could ask for help, all of those kinds of things. And it's interesting because, part of how they were so well trained is that they just do, right?
Right.
So as part of this exercise, one of the horses just kept walking ahead of the participant, and she was holding at the end of the rope, at the end of a 6-foot rope. So And it was going around, they were going around the arena. It was almost like he was dragging her around. And there was a point in time where she finally dropped the rope and said, this is exactly what's happening in my life. And, she blamed herself for the horse's behavior.
Wow.
Which we can't, we're responsible for ourselves. We can't control what other people do. We can control how we respond to it or whether we engage in it. And so the question eventually came up is, at what point in time did you know that this horse was not the right horse for you? And she replied, before I ever put the halter on.
No kidding. Wow.
So there was a lot. That's with the therapist afterwards, he said, I cannot believe how fast and deep you can go in one, 50-minute session. That was 50 minutes. I mean, just bam.
Yeah.
We got to the heart of what was going on, and it's, raw and it's real, but you're in an environment that's very comfortable. We don't do anything else here but this. Equine Assisted Therapy and community outreach. So we're dedicated to the nonprofit work that we're doing. So we don't have people coming and going. And so, we always feel people feel, very comfortable and safe, here. And she felt comfortable and safe enough to share. It was very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow, what a powerful story. You're listening to The Public File. I'm Doug Thomas, and my guest this morning is Donna Eckwortzel. She's the founder of Heart's Landing Ranch, where they're doing some groundbreaking work in our community. You can find out more online at heartslandingranch.com. Well, Donna, what initial services do you offer through Heart's Landing?
We've grown, like any organization, right? You understand how to fill a need. And at first it was just one-on-one mentoring. There's an organization up in Bend, Oregon called Crystal Peaks Youth Ranch, and we're similar to them in terms of the approach initially when we started. But after we were hosting a therapist on site who was bringing her, I think I shared earlier, 60 clients to the property, at first I didn't want, I didn't like it, I didn't understand it. But then the more and more that we had, we were realizing the type of people that we were seeing, from suicidal ideation to the severe trauma from trafficking or foster youth, that we realized that we needed to go beyond the mentoring and really bring in certified licensed therapists that could really, really help with the trauma. The horses, definitely are assisting, in that process.
Sure.
That's part of, what we're doing. So for instance, like, a victim that has been sexually assaulted or trafficking victim, we learned very early on that, part of the challenges that they have is creating, learning safe boundaries. And if they've been conditioned over a lifetime to, accept this abuse, right, or this assault, they disassociate. And it happens again and again and again, and it just seems like there's no hope. Right? How do you get out of that?
Right.
Do you put them in front of another man and, mock, having them stay present? What we found is that the horses really, you have maybe 110-pound or 150-pound woman, whatever that wise that I'm talking about in relation to a horse, a 1,200-pound horse.
Sure. And
you have someone that's not used to creating space for themselves, using their body and saying no. Then the horses really, really help with that, because they can sense, right? They get a little pushy when someone's not a leader. And so they really invade the space that someone has. And then what the people are learning is that they need to create that space with themselves and learn how to create those boundaries in a healthy way and stay fully present in it. And we had a young woman who had been trafficked for quite a bit of time, and she picked a horse that was quite pushy. We don't tell them which horses to pick because it's, that tends to work out.
Sure.
It's going to work out.
Sure.
And she was quite far along in her sessions and development, and we sent her into the barn to get the horse herself. And when she was coming out of the barn, the horse was trying to walk ahead of her, and she used her body, no words, just to really communicate to the horse, no, I want you to stay, over here.
Wow.
And it still gives me chills to this day. I mean, that was, I think, 5 years ago. It still gives me chills to this day, seeing her walk through, and we knew that she was going to have success. I mean, she had called us initially, that she was, homeless and suicidal and needed help. And thanks to great donors, we had scholarships for individuals, and it just was fantastic to see that. So we really work on a lot of boundaries as well in our programs.
Oh, that's great to hear. What a great story that is. Well, I understand Hearts Landing is expanding. So how's that going, Donna?
We are in need. Well, the beginning of this year, we had a goal of doubling our client base, and we've done that, adding new programs. So we've added intern marriage family therapists, we'd like some associates too, but practicum students from different universities in the area. So we added 2 of those. We added, group homes, several more group homes, the veteran programs.
Sure.
And we're really in need of covered space.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of the expansion, because it allows us, many organizations work part of the year. We try to work, or we have been working all year.
Yeah.
And rain, 110-degree heat or what have you, and it really does take a toll on us and the clients and the animals.
Sure.
So we've raised, as our first step, covered, money for a round pen. We've had generous organizations and individual donors help us raise funds for that, and it's time to be built.
Yeah.
We're looking for an experienced. I know. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
The round pen, it really is about connecting and relationships, boundaries. I mean, there's so many great metaphors that come out of that space, and that's such an impact for us. So we want to cover it. We're looking for an experienced contractor to help our nonprofit bring this to life and make those raised funds go as far as possible.
Nice.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're looking for, we have a converted tough shed, a 12 by 12 tough shed, if you can imagine. It's super cute inside as our office, but it's the only HVAC that we have. And so depending on the weather, it's quite interesting when you have, 5 to 7 people in that space, and we're, doing work in there. Not with clients, but gathering, ourselves. So, looking for kind of a mobile, maybe an interim step while we're raising funds for an, office space, mobile type of office unit that they have at different construction sites or what have you.
Right.
To expand that.
That leads me into my next question too. What's your vision for the next 5 years, and what can our listeners do to help?
Well, again, we really, we have been identified as from the EGALA organization, which is where we hold our certifications for equine assisted psychotherapy. So that they would love to do more trainings out here, right?
Sure.
And we could really have an impact. So during COVID, we were able to have it here because we had no covered space and everyone needed to be outside and 6 feet apart and things like that. So that was a blessing. And they said, you guys are amazing in terms of running events and hosting activities. We would like you to be our focal point for having these ongoing sessions and trainings. But the only catch is you don't have a covered space. Mm-hmm. So even the round pen, it wouldn't be big enough for the work that we need to do, but that's a step in the right direction. So, the 5-year plan is that we would have a large indoor arena. And there's, it's like 120 feet long by 60 to 80 feet wide would be the big goal. I would love to have at least 4 more equine specialists. And I don't think I did a good job of sharing that in equine assisted therapy, there's actually a 3-party team of therapists that are there. There's the equine specialist, which is like myself or Nicole, who is our one only employee now, or otherwise we're 100% volunteer run. Sure. And, it requires us to be certified, 6,000 hours of previous experience with horses. So we have the primary function of, facilitating the horse part. And then we have our licensed therapist, and then we have the horse or horses, right,
Mm-hmm.
on site. So that's an EAP therapy team dynamic. So the 5 year in the future, I would love to have 4 more ES equine specialists that have been certified and have practice that are available so that we can run concurrent sessions.
Right.
Does that make sense? So we have,
Right.
a group in the arena and a group in the round pen. That's one of our biggest, 5 year plans, is that we would be the West Coast, equine psychotherapy international training center.
Sure.
So we call it EPIC.
Oh, that's great.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, Donna. Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, we're out of time already, but before we go, what would you like to leave our listeners with this morning?
We have a stampede coming up, Spring Stampede, which kicks off our big day of giving. Tickets are available on our website, or you can find us, like us, and follow us on Facebook. You can find the invitation there. That's April 22nd, and it's 5 to 7. Yummy barbecue, and they get to tour the ranch and meet the people, meet clients, hear their stories, hear from therapists that will be on site as well. That's the people always love coming out here and seeing what's going on. It's a very fun event that's quick. You're up and mobile, going between stations, and it's a fun thing. We sold out last year at a harvest tour, and so you don't want to wait to get tickets. You want to definitely get your tickets now.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for